I've always been fascinated by haunted houses, but I never thought I'd end up living in one. It all started when I moved to a small town in the middle of nowhere for a job. I was looking for a place to live, and a real estate agent showed me an old mansion that had been abandoned for years. The price was right, and I couldn't resist the charm of the place, so I decided to buy it. At first, everything was fine. The house was old, and it needed a lot of work, but I enjoyed fixing it up. I painted the walls, fixed the plumbing, and put in new flooring. But as the weeks went by, strange things began to happen. It started with small things, like objects moving on their own or doors opening and closing by themselves. I thought it was just my imagination, but then I began to hear strange noises at night. It sounded like footsteps, but when I checked, there was no one there. One night, I woke up to find a figure standing at the end of my bed. It was a woman in a long white dress, with long black hair covering her face. I was frozen with fear, but the figure just stood there, watching me. After what felt like an eternity, the figure vanished, and I was left alone in the dark. I tried to tell myself that it was just my imagination, but the strange occurrences continued. The doors would slam shut on their own, and I could hear whispering in the halls. I even started to see the figure of the woman in the white dress more often, and I began to feel like I was being watched all the time. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder and harder to live in the house. I started to avoid certain rooms, and I would always keep the lights on at night. But no matter what I did, the strange occurrences continued. One day, I decided to do some research on the history of the house. I went to the local library and found out that the mansion had been owned by a wealthy family in the 1800s. The family had a daughter who had been engaged to a man from a rival family. The two families had a bitter feud, and on the night of the engagement party, the rival family attacked the mansion. The daughter was killed in the attack, and her body was never found. As I read the story, I realized that the figure I had been seeing was the ghost of the daughter. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I couldn't keep living in the house. I tried to sell it, but no one would buy it. It seemed like the house was cursed, and I was trapped in it. One night, I decided to confront the ghost. I went to the room where she had appeared to me before, and I called out to her. At first, nothing happened, but then I heard the whispering start. The figure of the woman in the white dress appeared in front of me, and I could see her face for the first time. It was a face of sadness and despair, and I felt a wave of empathy for her. I asked her what she wanted, and she told me that she was trapped in the house, unable to move on. She said that she needed closure, that she needed her body to be found and buried properly. I didn't know what to do, but I promised her that I would try to find her body. I started to research the history of the town, and I found out that there was a local historian who might be able to help me. I went to see him, and he told me that there was a hidden room in the mansion that no one had been able to find. He said that the room was rumored to contain a secret passage that led to the family's treasure. I searched the mansion from top to bottom, and finally, I found the hidden room. Inside, I discovered a dusty old chest. When I opened it, I found a stack of old papers and a map that led to the family's burial plot. It seemed that the daughter's body had been buried there, but the location had been lost to time. I followed the map to the burial plot, and after hours of searching, I finally found the daughter's grave. I dug it up, and there, at last, was her body. I called the local authorities, and they were able to identify her and give her a proper burial. After that, the strange occurrences in the mansion stopped. It seemed that the daughter's ghost had finally found peace. I was able to sell the mansion and move on, but I'll never forget the experience. I learned that sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't see, and that sometimes the only way to find peace is to confront our fears head on.